Well, let's speak to Jess Ralston, a senior analyst at Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit. Jess is live with us. Jess, we've got no confirmation from the Trust team, but there's a number of media briefings going on that they're looking very seriously at some sort of price freeze. Would that be the way you would go about it?
Good evening. Well, as you've rightly identified, this cost of living crisis is being mostly driven by gas prices, and it will be on the top of Liz Truss's agenda as she becomes the new Prime Minister. Now, freezing energy bills is one option for this winter, but I think what a lot of people are asking is, it's not something we can do every year because the costs would just be too great. So lots of people are asking, what is the long-term plan? And I think that that's the detail that we're lacking at the moment.
Well, presumably the long-term plan is to both get off gas generally and in particular get off Russian gas and to reduce exposure to the way that Russia can push up energy prices by restricting its supply.
Well, you would think so, but actually to date, we've heard Liz Truss speak very little about reducing energy demand. A lot of her focus has been around fracking and more domestic production from the North Sea. But when it comes to energy reduction strategies, we're seeing lots of that across Europe. Germany in particular have gone big on demand reduction, saying they're going to stop lighting up public buildings at night. Spain is similar, saying turn off your shop lights at night. And these seem like very common sense measures, but actually, we've heard Liz speak very little about that, and particularly about insulation. When Britain has some of the leakiest buildings in Europe, that does seem a little bit odd.
Well, we should emphasise that the Truss team has said several times that more detail will come once Liz Truss is Prime Minister. So we need to see what she says this week. But just let me ask you about the funding of a potential price freeze, because you could look at this and go, if it's going to be funded by loans to the energy companies, essentially all you're doing is pushing that cost down the track for younger generations to pick up in 10, 20 years' time.
Well, that is a consideration, and there are large questions about how this will be funded. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has come out and said that we can't do big bill bailouts every year. It's not something that's sustainable for our economy. So there will need to be a switch in terms of thinking in the new government away from these short-term solutions and more towards what we're going to do in the long term to, as you say, wean ourselves off gas and in particular Russian gas. And a large part of that funding, it might come from the windfall tax, but Liz Truss has seemingly ruled out extending the windfall tax. And so you can see there's just a lot of detail that's not really, the devil's in the detail, and we don't have that at the moment. So it will be interesting to see how they propose funding this, because there are large question marks about that.
Just briefly, Jess, do you think it was a fundamental mistake back in the 2000s to allow this reliance on Russian gas to build up?
Well, I think, we've had a short-termism attitude in our politics for a long time, where the politicians of the time have just looked towards the next election rather than beyond. And by putting in place some policies on renewables and some policies on energy efficiency to make our homes more efficient, we have achieved some success on offshore wind in particular. But, scrapping the kind of green stuff that Cameron was against in the 2015, 2016, that has led now to a stagnation in insulation.
Jess, very good to have you on the programme. Thank you very much indeed for your help. I'm just seeing Reuters reporting that there are plans to reduce the VAT on electricity to 6% from 13%.